Well, finally, producer Joe has decided to do a little bit of work. He left the building today and he went to visit a hedgehog sanctuary. Here's what he came out with.
So it's Hedgehog Awareness Week this week, and you join me at Hornbeam Hedgehog Sanctuary. I'm joined by the founder, Martin. Now, Martin, can you just describe exactly where we are right now?
So you're currently at Hornbeam Hedgehog Sanctuary, which is 10 acres of, it's a rural area, woodlands and open fields. The sanctuary itself forms part of an original animal sanctuary that dates back to the 80s. It was run by Graham Dangerfield at the time. So I run it now. And the sanctuary itself, its main role is to rescue and rehabilitate injured or sick hedgehogs, wild hedgehogs.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're surrounded by, I want to say, probably 20 or 30 hutches. Is that the right word? Yeah. So can you kind of describe to the listeners what we're kind of looking at here?
So we have outside hutches. These hutches are used for rehabilitation of hedgehogs. Generally speaking, these hedgehogs have been rescued. They would have gone to a vet if they had broken limbs, fractures or serious injuries. They may have come from being trapped somewhere, so they might be emaciated or dehydrated. But these outside hutches are for a prolonged rehabilitation time before being released back into the wild. And each hutch has a food bowl, water bowl. They have a wine box, which we use, and the wine boxes are where they nest. So we have a hole in there, 13 centimetre hole. The hedgehogs, because they're nocturnal, they will be sleeping during the day. As you can see now, there's no hedgehogs out. But at night, they will become active and they will be looking for food, and they'll basically, there's a prolonged time where they'll have injuries that need medication, antibiotics and painkillers. We'd administer those until they're fully healthy before being released back into the wild.
So we've moved a little bit around the sanctuary now. So Martin, can you kind of just describe again what we're looking at?
We're standing next to 8 hedgehog gardens, actually. So these are purpose-built gardens, about the size of a typical house garden. 4 of them have hedgehogs in them that are disabled, as in they're blind, so we can't actually release them back into the wild. Every year we usually have a rescue of at least one hedgehog that has been normally through trauma, through the head injuries, becomes blind or arrives blind to us. So we give them a fully wild life. I don't actually do much with them. I feed them, I give them additional food, but they are able to forage. They have their own hedgehog house, they have their own pond, a rock pond. They also have a feeding station that's where we put the food, and then generally speaking it's an unkept garden, so fairly overgrown, and they're able to forage for food and move around. Usually the hedge, because they're blind, they're out during the day, which is not normal for hedgehog habits, but they are out during the day, and because of that it's very difficult to release us for a bit back into the wild, because what ends up happening is they'll come out during the day bumping into car tyres and things like that, so it's pretty unsafe for them.
So a large part of Hornbeam Sanctuary is working with other groups, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Anne from the Wild Wheat Hamster group. And so how exactly do you kind of work alongside Martin?
Martin came to talk to us, and he is a member of the group as well, and he lets us know what we can do as individuals to help hedgehogs. And one of the ways that we're working with Martin is to try and create hedgehog-friendly environments and have hedgehog-friendly streets within the village. And that means things like creating hedgehog highways where people will have holes in their fences so hedgehogs can actually move without too much difficulty, because they do move and they need to actually get their food, and being stuck in a garden is not a good idea for them.
So if people are listening to this and they're thinking, I want to make my garden maybe slightly more hedgehog friendly, or my area, what are some of the things that we can do to help them?
Generally, maybe having a wilder part of your garden which isn't quite as cultivated. You can also buy little hedgehog houses which you can put in your garden, which might help them hibernate in the winter. But there's lots of little things that you can do. It's not a great outlay. You don't have to spend a lot of money, and you may even be able to see a hedgehog at night if you're lucky, if you create an environment for them.
So you join me in the hospital here at the sanctuary, and I'm delighted to say that Martin is holding an unbelievably adorable hedgehog. So who is this?
This is Rise. Unfortunately, Rise came up a few days ago, actually. Came in with a missing leg. So it was a recent injury. So one of its rear limbs is completely missing. This is a kind of typical injury, usually from being caught on something and they try and escape, and in the process they end up losing their leg, or sometimes it can be from being attacked by something. So this is a quite small hedgehog, 460 grams, so it's underweight as well, so it's a bit emaciated. Obviously struggled for a little bit because of his injury. Currently on antibiotics and painkillers. The wound itself is healing up, so although it's going to have 3 legs, it's still possible to release this hedgehog back into the wild, as long as we're happy that it's going to be foraging with its front claws and it's got mobility and able to make a nest by itself.
So at Hornbeam Wood Sanctuary, a lot of the importance here is put upon the educational side, educating youngsters on hedgehogs and conservation in general. And I'm joined by Ray. Ray, why do you think it's so important that we teach younger people about conservation?
We've got about 1,000 youngsters who live in the city kind of life, and they don't really get an opportunity to touch wildlife. What it means, its significance, its beauty. And at the sanctuary, there is this wonderful facility of Martin, the expert, being able to talk to youngsters at all kind of ages, right from the youngest of the beavers at 6, 8 years old, the cubs, and right up to the scouts. He's able to grab their interest, their fascination, and that's a huge advantage for the whole project of wildlife and conservation.
So I'm joined now in the Education Centre by Irene, a volunteer here. So Irene, what exactly do you do here?
Primarily, I started off by wanting to look after the hedgehogs themselves, but it's kind of evolved into doing fundraising and craft work to try and raise money and try and to raise awareness of the costs of keeping the sanctuary open and fundraising.
So if there's anyone listening here who maybe is thinking about volunteering here or somewhere similar, what are the benefits of working here? What do you get out of it?
You're outside, so it's a nice healthy environment, and you're doing some good for, little creatures that are very, very becoming rarer and rarer nowadays, due to people and cars. And if we can just help these little creatures to rehabilitate and get them back into the wild, then it's just a wonderful feeling to be part of something like that and do good in a very, very small way.
Now, Joe, that was brilliant. I loved hearing about those hedgehogs. But you didn't answer my question that I set you. Now, my 12-year-old said hedgehogs can hurt themselves with their spikes. Is that true?
Now, I did ask Martin off air whether that was the case.
Or is that because you were embarrassed by my silly question?
Partly.
Okay.
Being embarrassed of you is always kind of at the back of my mind.
Right.
And then, to be honest, I completely forgot until right at the end. And I asked Martin, and I said that, and he just looked at me and went, "No, they can't do that. They're much more intelligent than that
themselves."
Well, because they do curl up into a ball, and it looks like they should be able to spike themselves, but no, they're.
Yeah, because my 12-year-old said he had heard that if they curl up too quickly, they can prick themselves.
No, not the case. They always curl up. So basically, with a hedgehog, he showed me this, that if you turn a hedgehog upside down, because it's got no spikes underneath, and obviously they don't want to be vulnerable, they immediately curl up into a ball. They usually hibernate and sleep that way as well.
Oh, well, you did a fab job. I'm very jealous. They do look very cute in the photos. They do look very cute.
They
it
were,
sounds like
honestly.
they're doing a great job over there at Hornbeam Wood.
They
Love
really
it.
are.
Absolutely love it. But if you're